hear the rhetoric, Iranian-backed Houthis. So they're using this as a tripwire to get in, to strike the mythical Iranian nuclear program. And if you listen to Steve Witkoff's interview with Tucker Carlson, he's absolutely clueless. He couldn't even name the Oblast and the Donbass when they talked about Ukraine. And when it got to Israel, he's just, Iran is 5 minutes away from a nuclear bomb, blah, blah, blah. We took out all their air defense, so it'd be very easy to go in and just finish the job. All the rhetoric and lies from Netanyahu and the Gantz and the rest of them.
It's the exact same thing they said about Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Iran has got weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
How many times are they going to use the same lie and people are going to buy into the BS through mainstream media? It's sickening. Sickening.
They said the Israelis bombed a supposed nuclear facility in Syria and in Iraq, and it was just a warehouse. They want the U.S. to do their job. The thing is, if Iran really is 5 days away from a nuke or whatever, then the U.S. will nuke them. And if the U.S. nukes them, there's really no response. You can fire a few missiles, you're done. But Witkoff, by the way, Witkoff was the go-between when Bernard Kerik, the police commissioner in New York who found a 9/11 hijacker passport, had gotten a $250,000 loan through the board of governors, Attwood Wertheimer of the Jewish Agency in Israel, sent him money through Steve Witkoff, who's a marble dealer in New York. Why are you accepting a loan from a foreign national to give to a police commissioner? For what exactly? Why doesn't he just go to a bank? What is he getting it from Witkoff for? The guy is an absolute Zionist. He didn't even talk to Hamas. He went in there and all he did was talk to the Israelis and said, this is what Israel wants. And it reminds me of the Ukrainian, what the Europeans would do. They'd talk to Zelensky and Russia's not even at the table. How can you negotiate between two parties at war when only one of the parties is there? But that's the kind of brinkmanship and statesmanship we have. Steve Witkoff, who doesn't know what he's doing at all, is your point man to negotiate peace between one of the longest reigning conflicts between Israel and Palestine. It's very simple. Israel could do a prisoner swap and get all their hostages in a day, and they need to have a ceasefire. Palestinians need statehood. And in that process, you say, okay, well, your new government can't be Hamas, whatever. But they're only interested in ethnic cleansing. They want to keep the conflict going. Netanyahu needs to murder Palestinians to keep his own butt out of jail. And it's not like there's some more moderate Israelis behind him who want peace with the EA. They want it with an I. They want a piece of this, a piece of that. But they are going to annex Gaza piece by piece. They're going, just like they do the West Bank. They have turned that place into rubble. They're going to steal the land and award it to themselves. And they're going to have the U.S. attack Yemen, which will not go well. And Iran's only response, if they really are going to do airstrike, because first of all, their air defense has not been decimated. And if the Americans fly over within range, they will be shot down. And then what do? You drop a nuke to save face? Like what? There is no possible positive outcome from pushing for more violence towards Yemen and Iran. Yemen is only doing a naval blockade in accordance with the International Criminal Court and others of Israel committing war crimes in Gaza. And say, no, you don't get to come out of here because you are in violation of humanity itself. What you're doing, dropping bombs on apartments. If you had a ceasefire, then they get rid of the blockade. And they had done that. And then they reinstituted the war. So they reinstituted the blockade. You could get all those ships. You could have the Maritime Silk Road open and free. All you'd have to do is stop attacking Gaza and the West Bank. But they don't want to do that. And so, yeah, Trump's liaisons are all Zionists. His cabinet's a bunch of Zionists. And we knew this. I mean, I supported Trump over Harris. That really isn't saying much. But the whole time I'd warn people, he's really bad on Iran. He's really bad on the Middle East, but so is she. So that kind of cancels out. But we will give him credit on gutting U.S. aid, getting rid of Social Security for people who are 130 years old or older. Some of the waste that Elon and Trump have done has been good, but man, and when it comes to the Middle East, they've botched it. And when it comes to Ukraine, I think he's sincere that he wants the killing to stop and all that, but he's trying to get mineral rights, and they just don't know what they're doing. Witkoff doesn't belong there. He should not be in the cabinet. He should not have a position at all. But that's what the donor class wants, so that's why he's there. He's an Allison pick.
When it comes to Yemen and Iran, then, isn't this more than Netanyahu's self-survival? Doesn't this go back to the project for the new American century, the jewel in the crown, Iran being one of the biggest countries? Look at the resources Iran has got, the NEOCON agenda.
Yeah, so the script for Greater Israel, which is beyond Netanyahu, goes back further. And you're talking about PNAC, the Project for a New American Century, which co-founded by William Crystal and Robert Kagan, basically churned out a bunch of policy papers that are just the English version of what came out of the Knesset about the plans to topple Iraq, because that was the biggest threat, Syria, Libya, all of which were done, and Lebanon and Iran. And Yemen is now, they see it as like a proxy force of Iran, so just include that as part of Iran. But they had many countries that they wanted to complete regional hegemony for Israel, who is right now annexing land in Syria. The state of Israel has now grown in size because they took Mount Hermon and southern parts of Syria away once Turkish-backed terrorists went in and kicked out Assad and his army, except for a very small sliver in Latakia, I suppose. So right now, Syria is several states. You have Rojava with the Kurds, who are trying to reconcile, and you have al-Nusra Front terrorists, and then you have the Israelis who have taken the south. And they would love to go into Lebanon, wipe out Hezbollah, annex that too, all the way up to the Litani River or more. But they don't have the power to do it, and they don't have the power to do it in large part because Hezbollah is backed by Iran. And the Houthis act on their own, but Iran will support them. But Iran cannot and does not control what Yemen does. It's not in Iran's interest to oppose them, so they don't. But Yemen is acting in Yemen's own interest. They had already fought the Saudis in the cyclical wars, went through starvation, they got hammered. They are no friends to the United States and Israel, and that's not really resolvable. But there's no reason that the United States has to make enemies of any of these groups. It's only because of the Israeli lobby. It goes completely against U.S. interests to be fighting and sanctioning the people that sell the oil and the gas and the resources they need. They ought to be peace and trade with the entire Middle East. But that's not what they've done. And yeah, so PNAC, they wrote a script, and there's a very kind of infamous incident with Wesley Clark talking about a man coming from upstairs. Upstairs in the Pentagon means the Office for Policy, Office for Navy, Office for Army, Office for Air Force. He's talking about the Defense Policy Board, and with Richard Pearl and Rumsfeld coming down with a script of different countries they're going to take over. Like, because they just had 9/11, so they have an opportunity to go bomb somebody. And yeah, they went right down Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and Syria. And Iran, it was either going to be Iran or Iraq in the beginning, because those are the tough ones. So if you start with Iraq, you end with Iran. If you start with Iran, you end with Iraq. And they decided Saddam Hussein was within range to hit Israel with missiles back in 2003. And so they framed him for involvement in 9/11 through saying he passed anthrax to hijackers, which was not true. And they said he had WMDs, which is not true. And we invaded Iraq over nothing. And the state of Israel ends up with 77% of their oil imports from Iraq. And no more Saddam backing Palestinian resistance. All that ended with the American invasion of Iraq. The invasion didn't end the violence, though, because there's ongoing occupation, torture at Abu Ghraib, some of the worst stuff I've seen in my life. It was very frustrating watching that war come and knowing they're lying, and there was no YouTube or anything back then either. There was nowhere to go Not that I'd be allowed on that, but there was nowhere to go to say anything. And they just sat there and lied to the public and showed them cartoon weapon labs and everything else. And yeah, they invaded Iraq over nothing. And then you thought, okay, you should learn from that. No, they went right into Syria, right into Libya, 2011. What was the reason for invading Libya? No one can even tell you. Gaddafi had been there. What's the reason? Well, I know the actual reason, but like at least with Iraq, the public was aware of some like stated policy of weapons, even though they didn't really have them. They didn't even give a good. It was like, oh, there's a after the Libya invasion, they talked about our Ambassador Stevens being killed over a YouTube video that made fun of Muhammad. Even though there had been 2 prior attempts on his life before that YouTube video existed, that didn't matter. He was blowing the whistle on illegal gun running from Libya to Syria. That's why he got killed. And it flowed right into that. When the U.S. and others openly armed Al-Qaeda groups in Syria for about 8 or 9 years until they destroyed that country. And this is, Jeff Sachs points this out too. This is the Israeli script. For 30 years, they've been directing U.S. foreign policy into forever wars in the Middle East against American interests at the behest of an Israeli cabal.
So I want to show you a clip and get your thoughts on it. So my definition of a politician is someone who says whatever the public wants to hear to get the votes. And when they get in power, they do the complete opposite. And, you know, Tulsi, she was doing good up until a certain point. Credit to the Jimmy Dore show. I've been watching him.
And he was a big supporter of early Tulsi.
Yeah. And I can see why. Look, listen to what she's saying here.
Medicine and healthcare. Thousands of Yemeni civilians have died in this genocidal war being waged by Saudi Arabia with support from the United States.
It's absolutely outrageous that the United States has continued its support for years now for Saudi Arabia's genocidal war in Yemen.
It's outrageous, she said.
That has killed thousands and thousands of innocent Yemeni people and caused mass starvation and suffering, a cholera epidemic, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world.
Jimmy Dore refers to her as the good Tulsi in these videos. and then he shows a bunch of them, and until the present day, where is it? Well, basically now she's for bombing Yemen. She's gone over to bad Tulsi. Yeah. What do you make of that, Ryan?
You know, in Syria too, she met with Assad and his wife. She back in the day with good Tulsi, pre-APAC, she told the truth. There was a cholera epidemic. It was starvation. They put 100% tariff from Oman. They were blockaded. People were starving to death. They're being bombed. And it was MSNBC didn't even say the word Yemen for a year and a half. They did zero reporting on it through the whole conflict where people were getting blown to bits and really brutal levels of food scarcity. Babies with their bones poking out. And it was awful to see. And Tulsi was one of the only people in the government to raise a finger and say anything at all. Even though it's just lip, just blah. Post APAC, she gets rid of Daniel Davis. It was weird. You can feel like she's being told what to do because why hire him in the first place? But then she got told, no, you can't. He cannot work for you. So that didn't even last a day. And Danny Davis is great. He's one of us. He knows exactly what's going on. He wants peace. He knows. I was so excited for him to possibly be working under Tulsi. But the Israel lobby came in and said, no, not him. He doesn't like genocide. And Tulsi is just, it's such a betrayal. I don't know what they have on her or whatever, but once she got in, and she was saying this before she got selected, she just becomes a Republican suddenly, joins the other party, and starts grafting herself onto this NEOCON Zionist malarkey. And then she's given power. I was like, what does it matter if you have power if you're going to just do the same thing as the establishment always does? And now they're bombing Yemen. And she's being a good little girl and doing what she's told. But the fact that she tried to get Danny Davis in means a little bit of the old Tulsi was left. Like, well, maybe he can do it. And they're like, no, you can't hire him. Which means it's not like she had some sudden ideological change. This is more of coercion of some sort, bribery or worse. And it could be on someone near to her or on her. I don't know, but I know that Tulsi knows better about Yemen. I know she does. She's not a dumb person, which is hard to say about a lot of people in government. It's not incompetence or ignorance. She's being pressured.
There's endless videos on YouTube of Tulsi speaking about bombing Yemen from like 5 or so years ago. And now she's done this complete flip. But Ryan, so if Trump is ending the path to war with Russia through Ukraine, are the neocons just not setting up another path through Yemen, Iran? Russia backs Iran if America starts bombing Iran with Israel, and then America is at war with Russia. Isn't it just another route to their objective of trying to get war with Russia going?
Well, I think they want to divide them so they could say, in order for us to knock it off in Ukraine, you have to cut your support to Iran. They'll try to leverage that in. And he could play stupid like, well, I'm not doing it. The Europeans are backing Ukraine, and I'm backing the Europeans, so we're still backing Ukraine. U.S. is still backing Ukraine right now. Zelensky caved and, okay, you can have the minerals, whatever. He's trying to make it a condition like, oh, like, we will cut off if America backs off Ukraine, Europe doesn't have the means by itself. So if America really wanted to end the war, they could cut the purse strings and Ukraine would have to capitulate, meaning all that land they've already lost, pull out, get completely out of Kursk, which has pretty much happened because the Russians dug under and got them. But they're going to lose the Donbass. They're going to lose that whole Kherson, Zaporozhye, Luhansk and Donetsk, something Witkoff could even name. That's gone. That's Russia now. And you're going to have to acknowledge this. In Crimea especially, don't even, that's Russian. And it's not coming back to you. Give up your claims and withdraw and stay out of NATO. There's all these conditions the Russians want. And if they're not met, then they have no reason to care whether you continue to back Ukraine or not, because it'll just take longer, but the writing's on the wall. Russia's winning that war and going to take all those things anyway. And if you won't reconcile while you have leverage, then you're not going to have a Ukraine. They'll just go, or they'll go all the way to the Dnieper River at least. So you're going to lose Kharkiv. Do you want to lose Kharkiv? Probably not, but you will. They don't care.
A question from IB. The US is not walking away from Ukraine and letting Europe pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine.
Yeah, Europe can't pay for all of it. But Trump thinks, he's shaky with NATO already, but not because he disagrees with the aggression that NATO does. He just doesn't want to pay as much. He's like, you guys should pay more of your fair share, what he thinks in your mind. Europe should pay more than, why should we have to pay for their defense? It's like, because you're not paying for their defense. You're paying for your offense. You are on the offense. You are using Ukraine as a battering ram to ram against Russia. By handcuffing them to Ukraine, Russia couldn't get involved in Syria, and Israel took Syria. By being, strapped to Ukraine, you can now go mess around in Yemen or Iran, and Russia can't spread itself thin. If the war in Ukraine truly ended, I doubt Russia would immediately want to get in another conflict, but they would be able to give more support to Iran, whether that would be in air defense systems, drones, whatever. They could, as an ally, be involved in that. But Iran can handle what's coming to them, except for the nukes. They do have strong air defense. It was not wiped out. It doesn't matter what the Israelis say. They said that to save face, because after Promise 2, Israel went in and tried to level Iran's alleged nuclear sites. They couldn't get through even one layer of air defense, and they had to turn back. And so they said, yeah, we blew up all the air defense. They didn't get any of it. Nothing. And yet Iran and Yemen have proved that they can get ballistic missiles through every layer of Israeli defense and tag bases in Jaffa, for example. whenever they want. So yeah, that's why Israel realized they have to get America to do it for them, just like they did in Iraq and Syria and Libya. They don't have the means, but it is not clear that America has the means either to do it, short of using nukes. I mean, America has the means if it had the political willpower, but it doesn't. They're not going to put boots on the ground. And that would be, I mean, you're talking very high casualty rates on both sides if that were to happen. And Iran would lose that conflict. But I don't think Americans are willing to pay the price